Welcome to the Tribe of Testimonies. Here you will find conversations with faithful Native American members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, sharing their stories and their love of the Savior. My name's Andrea Hales. I'm Navajo, and I'm glad that you've decided to come and join us today. My guest today is Janice Clemmer. I haven't met her in person yet. I hope someday I can. She lives here in the Salt Lake Valley with her husband, whom she's taking care of right now. She's just amazing. Her son reached out to me a while ago and suggested her, and I've tried to reach her and finally was able to do it, and I'm glad that we could get that scheduled and have this time together. She's brilliant. Somebody you would say, well, that person has a thirst for knowledge. She has 5 graduate degrees, guys. 5. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this time because she's just warm and wonderful. And here's Janice. I am on the phone today with Sister Janice Clemmer. Sister Clemmer, would you please introduce yourself in your tribal way as much as possible? If it's in your language, great. And if it's not, that's fine. Not everybody speaks their language, and some languages are dead.
Since I do not speak my language, it was something that I was not brought up with, even though I did have an opportunity to do so. My name is Janice White Clemmer. I was born in Warm Springs, Oregon. It's the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs in Central Oregon. And I was raised by my parents, Aradana Aguilar White and Father Walter White. My mother was from Oregon and my father was from Oklahoma.
Oh, wow. Would you share something that you love about your heritage as it relates to the gospel of Jesus Christ? It can be pretty much anything, a story, a celebration, a way of life, a ceremony, anything, but as it relates to the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Inasmuch as I was not brought up in the tribal ways of either tribe, you see, both of my parents had attended boarding schools, and my mother figured that it was better that we learn English and do it well. And my father died when I was young, when I was about 7 years old. So I can remember him, though, being able to speak his tongue, and he would sing and all. He was a very artistic, musical person. He was a very good father, and there were 4 of us who were born to this particular union. My older sister, who is now deceased, another sister who died at infancy. I was born, and then I have a younger sister. So, and she is still alive, living in Oregon. I was never close with the parents of my father's family in Oklahoma, even though we did go back and visit them. That's part of the family that I've never had a relationship with, and as a result, I don't know a lot about them except through the regular histories that come and that are pretty much known. My mother was of the Wasco tribe and Warm Springs in Oregon. My father was from the Shawnee, Delaware, or Lenape groupings out of Oklahoma. She was raised in Oregon. My father was raised in Oklahoma. And so, as I said, I don't know that much of the family in Oklahoma. Now, I was raised in a Christian family. We never were introduced to any of the, older tribal ways. And I was raised or baptized and raised as a child in the United Presbyterian Church there in Oregon. And my father's family were primarily Baptists. But as I grew older, I was introduced to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints through friends and family that were members. And I was baptized on October 31st, 1959. And that's kind of funny because it was Halloween. And my friend who I grew up with, her parents are educators over in Madras, where we went to high school. And we went to the University of Oregon, and she attended my baptism that evening. I don't know if it was a good or bad omen for her, because she had on a beautiful patent leathered high heels, and one of the heels got stuck in one of the mattings there at the church and broke off, and she was not happy about that. but overall, the gospel was introduced to me taught to me by two sister missionaries out of Idaho Falls and Rigby, Idaho. And those ladies were just wonderful people. And so after that first year at the University of Oregon, I transferred down to BYU because I figured that the gospel was something that I needed to know more about. And certainly there was more opportunity to be exposed to the gospel through instructions at BYU in Provo. Even though when I was at the University of Oregon, I did attend the institute that was there. So there were some really good people who were faithful members. In fact, one of the people at the institute was Doug Alder from Salt Lake City, who acted as leader of our particular group. And later on, after he graduated from doing his doctoral work, he would eventually returned to Utah and became president of, I think it was Dixie College. But he and his family were very good people too. Overall, the gospel was something that was a good basis for how my life was lived. My family were not drinking people, and so we never had to worry about those kinds of temptations growing up. And even though I knew that these were not good things to engage in, because I could see through these influences that my family had, that these habits were good and healthy. And this was something that was a practice that always managed to be useful to me when I was courted and finally did marry a very good person.
Yeah, I love that. So did you meet your husband at BYU?
Yes, through mutual friends. He, interestingly, was a returned missionary. He is non-tribal, and his family came, well, they were primarily LDS background, Mormon pioneer heritage types. And so it was interesting that he had served his mission down in Brazil. And through my friends at BYU, we had a good association. We were married at the Salt Lake Temple here in Salt Lake City. And even though about a year and a half prior to that, I took out my endowments at the Idaho Falls Temple, where the two sister missionaries lived, and they were able to be supportive in that effort as well. So it was a good grounding to be able to attend temples and enjoy the blessings that come from understanding the gospel through those teachings as well.
Yeah. I found you because your son reached out to me. He thinks really highly of you. He says you have interesting stories, and for instance, that you have an education. Don't you have a PhD?
Yes. I earned as I said, I took 1 year at the University of Oregon and transferred down to BYU. Once I finished BYU's education with a bachelor's in archaeology and anthropology with a minor in history. After we married, we went back to Washington, D.C., and that's where my husband was a student at the George Washington University School of Medicine, and he became a medical doctor. And I was always determined to earn more to earn more and learn more. And as a result, when we were able to come back to Utah, and we had 2 children, a son and a daughter. When they became of age and started school, I was able to pursue more education. I was able to earn one PhD or Doctor of Philosophy degree in history, as well as one in Cultural Foundations of Education. Later on, I earned a Juris Doctorate degree, or a JD, which is a law degree, so I could practice law as well. So in all of this endeavor, it was a lot of, I thought it was a lot of fun. I did learn a lot. I had earned two master's degrees, 2 PhDs, 1 JD, and I've passed this information on to and encouraged our children as well, both of my husband and myself, to our children, and they both went on to earn their bachelor's degrees and master's degrees as well.
You have 5 graduate degrees.
Yes.
Wow. You're amazing. So did you go to work after you did all of this, or while you were doing this?
Yes, I taught down at BYU. I was hired down there to teach in the School of Education with an opportunity to teach history with the Department of History as well. But eventually, one of my deans said, "Look, we want you to devote yourself to focusing on one or the other, because that way we'll take care of you and help you in your efforts to be a teacher, a professor." And that was no problem. So I thought, well, okay, I know that people were able to learn a lot through what I was doing. And so I joined up with the School of Education to help teach people to become educators as well, to earn their teaching certificates. Because through the years, I did earn a teaching certificate and was able to teach in San Francisco when we were there. My husband had been stationed at the Presidio there with the U.S. Army when he was doing some work when we lived in that region. I retired from teaching at BYU in about 2005, and so it was a long, interesting history. I enjoyed what I did, I have not gone back to teaching professionally, but I have been teaching, of course, within the church itself in primary. so it does help.
Wow, that's amazing. Were there any experiences that you had while you were teaching that made you recognize God's hand in your life?
Well, that was something that was always there. I feel I was blessed from having good parents and having the family that I did. parents who were supportive in what I was doing, and in the friends that I selected throughout my life. These were always good people. I didn't run around and party and carry on like a lot of young people did. And these are the young people I associated with in my life were young people who eventually had collegiate aspirations as well. And I believe that of the 5 people that I was closest to growing up and graduating with from high school, did go on to their respective universities, and we all did earn degrees as well. So I feel like this was a good thing. And nobody ever made fun of my religion or my belief system. Everybody I associated with were practicing Christians. And as a result, I think that this was strengthened also, and strengthening us also in the things that we undertook. We weren't fanatic types running around saying, well, look, I'm going to tell you all about God and things of that nature. We weren't in that kind of a mode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you grow up on the reservation and these people were friends from the reservation?
Some were, but the majority were youngsters who grew up in town and at Madras, or their families were farmers out in the community as well. So it is one of those communities in which schools from throughout the young people came from various elementary schools. We didn't have junior high schools in our particular county. So we went from first grade or kindergarten through high school, joined up in high school in Madras. That was the basic school for the county.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So how big is your tribe, the Warm Springs?
Well, it's going to vary because you'll have people who are enrolled members as opposed to the non-enrolled. And we have an agency office that has tribal government as well as the federal government doing its taking care of what needs to be done. Our basis of industry in our reservation was that of timber and farming, stock raising. It was a small community. We had around perhaps 2,000 people. Now, I don't know what that enrollment basis is now, because certainly not everybody could be a member. There were requirements to be a member. Not only did you have to have the blood from one of those tribes, the Warm Springs or Wasco, and or people could join if they were members of a certain Paiute tribe that was there as well. You not only had to have the bloodline, but you also have to have a residency in which you had to be living there for a certain period of time before you could be declared a member. Now, there came a time in our history for our particular tribe that a person would just be an automatic member.
So, yeah, I know. Did you know of anybody that had received a PhD before you went off and started this career of education?
No, I did not personally know anybody. We had a very good high school in Madras, but even though we had some people who had master's degrees, nobody had a doctorate degree. And so when I did go off to school at the University of Oregon, there were people then who did say, well, this might be something you want to consider. So I said, that sounds right to me.
That's so great that you had people in your life who were encouraging like that.
Oh, yes. I was very blessed to have that happen.
Yeah. When you were teaching on the collegiate level, were you able to influence any, do you feel like you were able to influence any students' lives in a life-changing way, a profound way?
There were rarely any females in the professorship lines at BYU at that time. And certainly there weren't any minority people. And I was one of the, I guess, a rarity of being a visible female minority at BYU. And some people just didn't know what to do with me because they'd never come across somebody like me before.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember one person, one man who just didn't, he just was perplexed because he told me, he says, well, shouldn't you be home raising your children? And I said, my children have been raised and they're doing their thing. And this is something that we're all doing and encouraging each other to get as much education as we can. And this was coming out in the 60s at this time that these men who held the priesthood were not quite sure what this meant. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of funny on one hand because I could see them struggling with this. Okay, who is this? Who is this short, dark person anyway? And let alone a female, because women were always seen as the helpmeet, and that was okay, no problem there. But as far as influencing others, I think the young women and men that I've taught could see the possibilities of that. Yes, it's a good thing that women could be educated. And I would encourage all the people in my classes that when you marry or when you have children, you certainly want them to be capable and have the good education as well. So you raise up a whole series of young people who are able to consider this beyond themselves. But it was bizarre in some regards.
So you said one of your degrees is in archaeology?
Yes.
Has that degree changed or helped you have a better understanding or vision of the Book of Mormon?
Yes and no, because certainly we don't know everything that the Book of Mormon offers, but yet it was a reinforcement of what the Book of Mormon stands for and what it means. And to me, I have to think about this frequently because, as you know, the Book of Mormon is loaded with people going to war with each other. And so you had to think, well, I had to think, all of these men who die by the sword and arrow and clubs and everything else are killing each other off. So it's a pretty violent bunch of folks that we're dealing with here. And I would have to think, well, in all of this ongoing warfare, that there were women who were producing children to fill those ranks of warriors. So they had to be a pretty fertile batch of folks too. In all of this.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing story of the various accounts that we see and understand that come to us from the Book of Mormon. And most certainly these are evidences that there is a God who loves everybody, who has raised up people in this hemisphere to do what needs to be done. So the gospel has spread throughout the world. And yes, we recognize that Jesus Christ did die for us and that he did make an appearance here in this hemisphere to reassure us that his sacrifice was made for all of us, not just one select body of people.
Yeah. Do you have any particular passages or stories in the Book of Mormon that have come to mean special things in your life?
I don't have a particular favorite. Is that what you mean? I think that the teachings that we find in Alma, for example, um, are, are strengthening. And most certainly we know that there's a lot of Old Testament references that are found in the Book of Mormon as well. But here again, these would have to come through inspiration and revelation so that we have a better and broader understanding of that sacrifice that Christ made for us.
Yeah. You said that you are married, but you were telling me that your husband is not well health-wise right now.
Yes, he's had a hemorrhagic stroke when he was at the National Sons of the Utah Pioneers convention in Idaho. But he's coming along quite well. He has a little balance problem, so he has to be careful about walking and things like that. But that's part of the recovery. So we are blessed that he's still with us here in the flesh.
Yeah. You mentioned that you've been a teacher in primary, but what have some of your favorite callings been in church, and what have you learned from those favorite callings?
Well, I think primary has always been a lot of fun because you have children who are very inquisitive and sometimes very antsy. And it's also a matter of classroom discipline to keep people engaged, to pay attention to what's being taught. And I know even if you look at some of our gospel doctrine classes, there are some folks who snooze, even though the person is busy trying to teach them something they prepared. And it's just interesting to see the differences in attitudes of ages in our church and in our congregations. But that's all right. We all learn at different speeds, and we have an understanding of different things. And this is part of the blessings that come from having brains and spirits to learn as much as we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is an experience that you've had that has strengthened your faith in our Savior Jesus Christ?
This is an ongoing experience. I think, as I said, it's kind of like a weaving. Everything's just kind of blended together. I think it's the miracle that we have of not only bearing children, supporting children who try to do the right things for the right purposes, of being blessed with people who have good health, and having a spouse who honors the priesthood and who's lived a worthy life as well. So I think all of these things together just is like a ribbon of life, and I've been very blessed. Because I keep thinking, well, I'm now 81 years old, and I could die any time. And I keep thinking, well, that's another big adventure that's out there as well. So we're just kind of preparing. It's kind of like preparing for an exam. You study, you work hard, you do the best you can, and hope for the best as well. And then we'll see how this all sorts out when the time comes to pass from this physical life into another existence.
Yeah. You said you have a son and a daughter?
Yes.
And do you have grandchildren?
Yes, we have 7 grandchildren and a batch of great-grandchildren. We have 2 great-grandchildren that we help here in Salt Lake City that we support as well. Now we have a granddaughter, their mother, who works full time, and she loves her children, and her work hours are such that she can't always pick them up after school. So that's what we do. We are child minders as well. So this this is the way it's been, though, in our tribe. People just take care of each other, help each other, support each other. And even within our LDS church, we know that there are people who support their own families as well. So in the very real sense, we are all tribal people, and everybody takes care of each other.
Totally. I definitely agree with that. What are some of the experiences that you've been able to share with your children? Like, you said that you guys have not always lived in one place. What are some of the things you've taught your children by moving to different places or witnessed with them?
Because my husband was with the medical corps, we've lived in San Francisco, California, on the Presidio. We've lived in Honolulu with the Triple Army Medical Center there. Of course, we've been back in Washington, D.C. And so we haven't been around a lot, but we've been around enough to meet other people as well. And so we've had a wonderful time with various congregations in the places that we've lived, and some really fine people who are supportive of each other in their particular communities, and come from different backgrounds as well, all sizes, ages, colors, and so it's been fun. Maybe I shouldn't use the word fun too much, but I'm not one of these people that drags their body around saying, "Oh, woe is me," feeling sorry for myself for any purpose. But other than that, it's been an ongoing series of interesting and good experiences.
Yeah. Just talking to you, some of the gifts of the Spirit I see in you are, I hear in you are that you love education, that you are willing to just love people where and as they are. I see that you are one who finds joy in life. What other gifts of the Spirit do you feel like you've been blessed with?
I recognize that there are people who may not like me, and I don't worry about that because I figured, well, that's on you. That's
Totally.
That's not on me. I will do what I need to do because I sincerely enjoy people. But as I say, there are going to be people, and there have been people who have not liked me. But all right, that's God will get you for that. But that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, that is a good gift of the Spirit. It's also part of resiliency. I definitely think that is a good thing to recognize in yourself as well, because then you're able to let things go really easily.
Oh yes. I mean, I know that it seems to be a mode of depression that has settled on our nation for some crazy reason. People feeling sorry for themselves and saying, "Woe is me," and feeling like they're entitled to something more. And it's kind of sad for them, I believe, when they see other people doing what they need to do to survive. And I think, well, this I guess this is Satan's way of eroding their spirits. And I just think this is not me. I'm too ornery to let that get on my case.
Yeah. Are there any general conference talks or speakers even that have really impacted your life?
I am here in the Yale ward in Salt Lake City in the Salt Lake Bonneville stake. And in our ward, we have people in our stake. We've had people who've been general authorities, our current president, Russell M. Nelson, is a neighbor of ours, and one of his daughters was a good friend of our daughters when they were growing up. And that family has always been supportive of each other and such, and they've always been good examples. And here again, we always encourage our children to seek out good companionship as well, because we know that it depends on who you run with sometimes. That can be supportive or not supportive. But they've been blessed in this regard as well. Now, our daughter has died. She died of breast cancer. And yet, of course, it was sad that she died, but she has died in the gospel, and we hope her existence now is a good one. She was always a very athletic child. Of the two children that we've had, she was the athlete. And so it was always a joy to have both of those children around. And it's always a blessing to have good children who don't bring dishonor to you or to the family name. And they recognize this as well. And we try to instill this into our grandchildren and great-grandchildren to do the best they can and work hard and keep gospel principles in their mind and in their lives as well. And they do the best they can, because one of our granddaughters is in the Navy back in the Norfolk region, and she's had some health problems, but she's coming along quite well. These are physical problems, but other than that, people in our family are again, we try to raise resilient folks.
Yeah. Are there any other stories or thoughts that you want to share before we get to our final question?
Well, I would encourage everybody to try to do their best. It's kind of like the Boy Scouts. You do your best. Our son earned his Eagle Scout by the time he became 12 and 13, because when we were in San Francisco at the time, we always read about all of these young people who earn their Eagle Scouts, and we thought, oh my, we're moving into a community that is really big on this. And so he worked very, very hard to earn his Eagle Scout, and he was the youngest one in our ward or in our state even when that time came for him to get that. And people thought, man, he's really a young kid. He said, yes, he is, because most of the young men who were earning their Eagles were getting into the to the upper ages limits for further scouting awards. And it was kind of funny, because I thought, well, wait a minute, here are all of these people who have merit badge backgrounds and such, and then the young men who are getting their Eagle Scouts are 17, 18 years old, almost ready to go on their missions, and this is wild. And yet here was our son, who was just coming into the Aaronic priesthood, who was getting his, and people were just kind of amazed by that. But he set the good example for them too.
Yeah, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing all these things. I have one final question for you. What does it mean to you to know that you belong to the tribe of Israel?
Well, I think the wider net is that we're all part of the tribe of Israel. It's just a matter of recognizing that and to do your best, and wherever you are. And I've always tried to do my best wherever I am. It's not always been the super best. It always hasn't been an A+ performance, but it's always been the B's and A's, and that's okay performances that I've done. and I feel pretty decent about that. But I know that I could not have done this without a gospel base and my belief in my Savior to be able to have these blessings. So the sacrifice did not fall on a barren rock.
Well, thank you so much, Janice. You are delightful, and I am just fascinated by all the things that you've shared. So thank you for your time today.
Okay. Well, thank you, Andrea. And I hope that your life goes well, too, and that your children and spouse are reinforcing good things for your children and your family as well.
My thought today comes from Helaman chapter 8, verse 25. You know how you're reading the Book of Mormon and things are the same. And if you read the Book of Mormon lots of times, it's just wonderful and comforting and good. And then sometimes when you're reading the Book of Mormon, you see something that you're like, I haven't thought about it like that. Anyway, Helaman 8, verse 25. But behold, ye have rejected the truth and rebelled against your holy God. And even at this time, instead of laying up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where nothing doth corrupt, and where nothing can come with which is unclean, ye are heaping up for yourselves wrath against the day of judgment. Okay, so obviously this is quite a black and white picture of things. But the thing that stood out to me here were the two words, laying and heaping. Instead of laying up for yourselves treasures. So juxtaposing those in my head visually, I'm seeing somebody who gently puts down something of great worth, carefully laying it, carefully placing it, treating it with honor and respect and gratitude and awe and reverence. And then the other word that juxtaposes that is heaping. You're just chucking things into a pile. You're just willy-nilly throwing things. You don't care how they land. You don't care what it is. You don't care if it breaks. You don't care. There's a lack of caring. I was just thinking about that, how sometimes even with some of the things I should be laying as a treasure, sometimes I just plop it down and I need to change my behavior because Heavenly Father would like us to lay up treasures instead of heaping up wrath. How are we treating sacred things and the words of the prophets and the scriptures? Which way are we treating it? Laying it or heaping it? I don't know if that's going to make a difference in any of your life today, but that was something that stuck out to me, and I just thought I'd share it with you. And I hope you have a super wonderful, awesome day. Tribe of Testimonies is not sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The music is a traditional hymn, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing, arranged and performed by Kyle Forsyth. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear how this podcast is affecting you. And I'm always looking for guests. If you or someone you know would be a great guest, you can reach me at tribeoftestimonies@gmail.com.